You know, the War of 1812, it's one of those conflicts that kind of gets lost in the shuffle of American history, right? It's sandwiched between the Revolution and the Civil War. But if you just skip over it, you miss this absolutely critical moment. A time when the brand new United States had to prove its independence all over again. So, what we're going to do here is break down the argument that this wasn't just a war of armies. It was really a clash of ideas. A clash that left a nation completely unprepared for a war it decided to fight on the high seas.
And this quote from President James Madison, it gets right to the heart of it. For this young country, this was an existential crisis. The whole thing wasn't just about land or borders, it was about legitimacy. Was America a real sovereign nation on the world stage? Or was it just going to be treated like a colony, with its citizens and its rights totally subject to the whims of European empires? For Madison, the choice was pretty clear. You either fight or you give up the very meaning of being independent.
And that's exactly why so many people call this America's second war for independence. See, the political break from Britain, that was already done. This was about something else. This was about earning the right to actually function as a nation, to trade freely, to sail the oceans without being harassed, and to have your flag and your citizens respected.
So what was it that pushed the country right to the edge? Well, it really boiled down to two huge issues, and both of them struck right at the core of America's economy and its sovereignty. We're talking about the forced kidnapping of its sailors and the chokehold being put on its trade.
This is the human cost of that first problem. According to a government report from 1806, that's how many American sailors had been impressed. And let's be clear, impressed is just a polite word for being kidnapped off American ships and forced to serve in the British Royal Navy. This wasn't some abstract diplomatic issue. This was a personal human tragedy for thousands of American families.
And this chart really shows you the impossible economic vice America was trapped in. You've got Britain and Napoleonic France in this epic, world-spanning conflict, and they're using economic warfare as a key weapon. Britain's Orders in Council said, hey, if you trade with France, we're seizing your ship. Then Napoleon's decrees said, oh yeah, if you trade with Britain, we're seizing your ship. So, for a neutral trading nation like America, it was a complete disaster. It didn't matter where you sailed, you were a target.
So what was America's response to all this? Not cannons, but commerce. Or well, a lack of commerce. President Jefferson was a big believer in economic pressure, so he pushed for the Embargo Act. The idea was pretty audacious, really. If we just stop trading with everybody, the economies of Britain and France are going to hurt so badly that they'll have no choice but to respect our rights. It was a massive gamble to try and win a global showdown without firing a single bullet.
And this brings us to the real tension at the heart of this whole story. You see, America's leaders were convinced they could win this fight with arguments, with legal documents, and with economic pressure. But they were living in an age where at the end of the day, the only thing that really settled disputes was military force.
This description of James Madison is so telling. He was a brilliant thinker, a master of debate and logic. He and the other leaders of his time were truly men of the pen. They loved crafting these incredibly detailed, powerful arguments, and they genuinely believed that reason and words should be enough to solve international problems.
But this classic quote just cuts right through all of that, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the problem. America was essentially sending lawyers with briefcases to argue with empires that had the most powerful armies and navies on Earth. Legal arguments, no matter how brilliant, just didn't matter to nations that settled their differences with warships.
And this quote from Thomas Jefferson, wow. It just shows you how deep the disconnect was. It reveals this staggering, almost unbelievable level of optimism. Think about it. After years of letting the military wither, there was this genuine belief that conquering Canada would be a cakewalk. This wasn't just confidence. It was a profound failure to understand their own weakness and the brutal realities of war.
And of course, that kind of misplaced optimism had very real, very severe consequences. This philosophy of putting ideals and balancing the budget way ahead of military readiness, it meant that when war finally did come, the nation was just shockingly unprepared to fight it.
Okay, just look at this balance sheet. Between 1801 and 1812, the government's top priority was paying down the national debt. And they did, a remarkable achievement. But at what cost? That money had to come from somewhere, and it came right out of the military budget. So what's the result? You're left with an army of less than 7,000 men to go invade Canada and a navy that Congress flat out refused to expand right when it was about to go up against the biggest maritime power in the history of the world.
And here's the key point.
When you show up to a sword fight with a strongly worded letter, when you care more about your balance sheet than your battleships, the result isn't some glorious victory. It's not even a clean defeat. It's something else, something much more draining.
Exhaustion. That one word says it all. It's how historians describe the real outcome of the war for the United States. The conflict didn't end with a victory parade. It ended with a collective, national sigh of relief. It was this grinding, miserable affair that wrecked the economy, tore the nation apart, and just bled its resources dry, all because it didn't have the power to actually protect itself.
Which brings us right to the main lesson from this whole conflict: the absolutely critical, non-negotiable importance of sea power.
Now, to really get this, you have to understand a concept called commerce destroying. This isn't just about sinking a few ships for the fun of it. It's a full-blown strategy to attack an enemy's entire financial system. You see, money and credit, they're the sinews of war. They're what allows a country to pay its soldiers and build its weapons. So, if you can attack an enemy's trade, you choke off their money supply. You attack the very source of their power.
So let's tie this all together. For a country like America, whose entire prosperity was built on trade, that trade was both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. The money from that trade was the foundation of everything. By choosing not to build a real navy, America basically left its economic lifeline totally undefended. That decision to pay down the debt instead of building ships, well, it wasn't just a simple budget choice. It was a massive strategic blunder that led directly to that feeling of national exhaustion.
And this all leaves us with a pretty important question for our own time. The world is obviously a very different place than it was in 1812, but that fundamental link between global trade and national security, that hasn't gone away. The story of this forgotten war is a powerful reminder that forces us to ask, for any nation that's tied into the global economy, what is the modern price of protecting those sinews of war?